What if one of the most powerful women in 16th century Europe wasn't a queen? What if she wasn't a noblewoman? What if she was a pirate? Long before stories of Blackbeard filled history books, a woman on Ireland's rugged western coast commanded fleets, challenged empires, and negotiated directly with one of the most powerful rulers in the world. Her name was Grace O'Malley, and despite becoming one of the most legendary figures in Irish history, many people have never heard of her. Grace O'Malley was born around the year 1530 in County Mayo, Ireland. She belonged to the O'Malley clan, a powerful seafaring family that controlled trade routes along Ireland's western coast. Unlike many noble families, the O'Malleys built their wealth through the sea. Their massive ships transported valuable goods across the rough Atlantic seas. Their sailors protected valuable trade routes, and their influence stretched across much of Western Ireland. According to legend, Grace begged her father to take her on one of his voyages. When told her long hair would become tangled in the ship's ropes, she cut it off. The story may be folklore, but it captured something real about Grace O'Malley. She had no interest in accepting limits. As Grace grew older, she learned skills rarely taught to women of her time: navigation, trade, diplomacy, and warfare. She married into another influential Irish clan, strengthening political alliances and expanding her family's reach. But when her husband died, many expected her influence to disappear. Instead, she took command. Grace assumed control of ships, territory, and followers. She led fleets across the Atlantic waters surrounding Ireland. She managed trade networks, she defended clan interests, and when necessary, she seized cargo from rival vessels. To supporters, she was a protector. To enemies, she was a pirate. Stories of Grace O'Malley's exploits spread throughout Ireland. She commanded dozens of vessels during her lifetime. Her strongholds overlooked important shipping routes. Captains knew her name, merchants knew her reputation, and rivals learned to respect her power. Some legends claimed she gave birth aboard a ship and returned to command the vessel almost immediately after. Whether every story is true remains uncertain. What is certain is that Grace O'Malley became one of the most powerful figures on Ireland's western coast, and her growing influence soon attracted the attention of England. During the late 16th century, England was expanding its control over Ireland. The Tudor government sought to weaken traditional Irish clan leaders and replace them with English authority. Grace O'Malley stood directly in the way. English officials viewed independent Irish rulers as a threat. Her wealth, her fleet, and her influence made her especially dangerous. As tensions grew, English authorities seized lands and imprisoned members of her family. The English believed they could break her power. Instead, they created a far more determined opponent. Then, at more than 60 years old, Grace O'Malley made an extraordinary decision. She would travel directly to England. She would seek an audience with Queen Elizabeth I, and she would present her case personally. Few people possessed the courage to challenge the English crown. Even fewer would attempt it face to face. But Grace O'Malley was not interested in ordinary solutions. The meeting would change everything. In 1593, Grace O'Malley met Queen Elizabeth I. The encounter became one of the most famous meetings in Irish history. According to tradition, Grace refused to bow. She did not consider Elizabeth her sovereign. Some accounts claim the two women spoke Latin because neither spoke the other's native language fluently. What is known is that Grace argued her case directly. She demanded relief for her family. She requested the release of imprisoned relatives, and remarkably, she succeeded. Elizabeth granted several of her requests. For a brief moment in history, two of Europe's most powerful women sat across from one another and negotiated as equals. Grace O'Malley continued to influence Irish affairs for years after meeting Elizabeth. Though England eventually tightened its control over Ireland, her legend endured. She became a symbol of resistance, a symbol of independence, and a symbol of determination. More than 400 years after her death, stories of Grace O'Malley continue to inspire people around the world. She was a sailor, a strategist, a merchant, a warrior, and one of history's most remarkable women. Because when we ask, what about the others, Grace O'Malley is exactly the kind of name we should remember.